Everything you've been taught about death is incomplete. It's not the end, not a void, and not something left to blind faith or guesswork. For over 1,000 years, a sacred and once forbidden text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, has mapped out exactly what happens in the 49 days following death. This ancient guide, once meant only for the most awakened minds, reveals that death is not a final breath, but the beginning of a spiritual test. This test determines whether you escape the cycle of rebirth or fall back into it, unaware and unprepared. Most fail, not out of weakness, but ignorance. They don't recognize the illusions they're seeing. They don't understand that what they feel, see, and hear is a projection of their own mind. By the time realization sets in, it's often too late. If the teachings are true, then the first moments after death matter more than your entire life. And it all begins at the moment you leave your body. Death isn't an end to awareness. On the contrary, something else awakens. You'll feel weightless, as though waking from a dream. Your heartbeat and breath are gone, yet you remain conscious. If you've ever had an out-of-body experience, it may feel strangely familiar, except this time, there's no returning. Then comes the light, a radiant, blinding presence known as the clear light of reality. If you recognize it and surrender to it fully, you can merge with it. This is enlightenment, a complete release from the cycle of birth and death. But very few recognize the light. Conditioned by fear, the soul clings to its identity, memories, and desires. It resists the unknown. That resistance gives rise to illusions. You may hear whispers, echoes of familiar voices, or see vague forms and familiar faces, but none of it is real yet. The mind begins to fabricate a reality based on what's once new. Some see religious figures they once worshipped, unaware these too are mental projections. If they understood this, they could let go. But most follow the illusions deeper into the bardo, the realm between death and rebirth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that awareness is the key. Those who prepare can pass through the illusions and be free. But the unprepared, clinging to their old lives, must undergo the full 49-day journey. This journey unfolds in stages. Time behaves strangely. Seconds can stretch into eternity, or days pass in a blink. You have no body, no voice, only awareness. Yet many don't realize they've died. They're caught in a dreamlike echo of their former life, trying to return to their homes, to be seen or heard. But slowly, the truth sinks in. This is death, and the mind resists it. It seeks comfort, explanations, anything to avoid the truth. But the bardo offers no comfort. It is not a resting place. It is a realm of transition and reflection. At first, the experience is calm, even peaceful. Some describe floating in a vast, formless space where thoughts ripple like waves. Then visions begin. Radiant beings appear, seen by some as angels, divine guides, or enlightened masters. They radiate peace and wisdom, but these are reflections of your higher self. If you recognize this, you can merge with them and escape the cycle of rebirth forever. Most hesitate. They doubt. And that hesitation changes everything. The radiant forms darken. Shadows emerge. The peaceful visions twist into terrifying shapes. Whispers become voices of fear and judgment. This is the test of illusion. These figures aren't demons. They are projections of your own fears, regrets, and unresolved emotions. The bardo is not external judgment. It's an internal confrontation. The more fear you feel, the more powerful the illusions become. The bardo is a mirror. It shows you everything you've avoided facing in life, and most find that unbearable. This is where the real test begins. At first, the visions are beautiful, celestial realms, beings of pure light, overwhelming peace. But they are not gods or judges. They are your highest potential, reflected back to you. If you recognize them, you transcend. But clarity is hard to find when the mind is clouded by fear, desire, and attachment. For those still clinging to their identity, the visions shift. The radiant forms flicker and distort. Reality begins to unravel. Then, just as quickly as they appeared, the peaceful visions vanish, replaced by terrifying forms. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this is when wrathful visions rise. As the days pass in the bardo, the comforting beings disappear, giving way to monstrous entities, grotesque, furious, and overwhelming. They roar with voices not of this world, some with multiple heads, blazing eyes, or countless limbs. These terrifying forms seem like demons or relentless hunters, and they strike deep fear into the unprepared. Most souls panic. They flee, scream, beg for escape. But there is nowhere to go. These horrors aren't real enemies. They're not external beings. They're projections of the soul's own fears, guilt, and unresolved pain. Every selfish act, every lie or cruelty from the previous life now appears in symbolic form. But the true danger is this: the more the soul resists or reacts with fear, the more powerful these illusions become. Terror feeds them. The only escape is awareness. The moment the soul realizes that these entities are illusions, creations of the mind, they vanish like mist in sunlight. The test is not to fight, but to recognize. This is the second great challenge after death. The first was seeing the clear light. This is overcoming the illusions of fear. Those who fail are pulled deeper into the bardo, caught in the web of karma. By the third or fourth week, the soul encounters its next trial, the life review. There's no judge, no God passing sentence. Instead, the soul experiences a total review of its life, not as memories, but as relived reality. Every thought, every action, every emotion is experienced again in full intensity, from both its own point of view and from the perspective of everyone it affected. Every pain caused, every joy shared, it's all felt directly. There are no excuses, no justifications, only truth. This is not punishment, it's reflection. The soul becomes its own witness and judge. For some, this is a blissful return of love and kindness. For others, it's an overwhelming confrontation with all they tried to avoid in life. And then, something deeper happens. This review doesn't just reveal the past, it shapes the future. The emotional residue left behind, whether guilt, sorrow, or longing, pulls the soul into its next life. The heavier the burden, the lower the realm of rebirth. Souls don't reincarnate due to punishment. They return because they're still bound by what they haven't released. The final test now begins. By the fourth or fifth week in the bardo, the soul stands at a crossroads. This moment is the most critical. It must choose liberation or rebirth. But here's the trap. Most don't even realize they're choosing. The final illusions are not terrifying. They are beautiful, comforting. Familiar faces, loved ones, places from life. All appear to call the soul back. The warmth of recognition lures it in, but these are not real. They are glimpses of the next life forming, shaped by karma. If the soul clings to them, if it reaches out with desire or fear, it's instantly pulled into a new existence, a new body, a new forgetting. Rebirth is automatic. It feels like waking from a dream, with no memory of what just happened. The cycle begins again. Life, suffering, death, and return. But for a few, those who are prepared, the outcome is different. They recognize the trap. They see the illusions for what they are, projections meant to keep them bound. These souls remain still, aware, unattached, and in that moment, the illusions collapse. The grip of karma breaks. Rebirth fades. This is liberation. Not a place, not heaven, but the awakening to a reality beyond illusion, beyond duality, beyond suffering. Almost no one reaches this. It requires one rare thing, awareness at the exact moment of death, the clarity to see through the illusion before it claims you. And that is why these teachings were hidden for over 1,000 years, because if people truly understood what happens after death, it would change everything. The next part of this journey goes beyond what happens after we die. It asks a deeper question. Why was this knowledge hidden for so long? For over 1,200 years, the teachings in the Tibetan Book of the Dead were kept secret. Reserved only for the most advanced spiritual seekers, they were hidden from the public, suppressed by religious institutions, and dismissed as superstition. Even today, most people have never heard of them, and that's no accident. This wisdom was seen as too powerful, too dangerous for the unprepared, because if people truly understood what happens after death, it would destroy everything they thought they knew. Their fears, beliefs, and entire understanding of reality would collapse. Think about it. If death isn't the end, if it isn't punishment, and if there's no divine judge waiting for you, then what happens to the systems built on those beliefs? Religions would lose control. Governments would lose power. The foundations of society would begin to crack. For centuries, religious institutions have preached about heaven, hell, divine punishment, and obedience, all as a way to secure salvation after death. But at their core, these ideas are tools of control. If people believe that some external force decides their fate, they will submit. They will follow rules. They will fear stepping out of line. But what if none of that is true? What if no one is judging you except yourself? What if the afterlife isn't a place of punishment or reward, but simply your own mind reflecting itself back to you? This is why these teachings were kept hidden, because they remove the illusion of external salvation and reveal a far more challenging truth, that you are fully responsible for your own soul in life and in death. And there's more. Modern science is beginning to echo what these ancient teachings said long ago. Near-death experiences often describe the clear light, life reviews, and overwhelming feelings of peace or terror depending on one's past actions, just like the Bardo describes. Even cutting-edge quantum physics is beginning to suggest that consciousness may not be bound to the brain, that it may exist beyond time and space. What was once dismissed as myth is starting to align with scientific discovery. So why don't more people know this? Because the world is designed to keep you distracted, obsessed with material things, temporary pleasures, social validation, and fear of loss. You're encouraged to chase success, to keep busy, to avoid deep questions, and by the time death comes, you're completely unprepared. The biggest lie about death is that it's a mystery. It's not. The Tibetan masters mapped it out over 1,000 years ago. They taught that the mind creates the afterlife, that the first 49 days after death follow a precise sequence, and that the only path to freedom is through awareness. Yet almost no one is preparing. Because if you are not conscious in life, you won't be conscious in death. And that means the cycle will repeat again. But for those who are ready, for those who begin to wake up now, there is another way. The real question is no longer what happens after death. The question is, are we already failing the test? If the Tibetan teachings are true, then most people are already trapped in an endless loop, not because they're evil or weak, but because they're completely unprepared. Just look around. How many people even think about death, let alone prepare for it? Society tells us to avoid the topic, to fear it, to act as if we have all the time in the world. We distract ourselves with jobs, entertainment, and comfort, while death approaches silently. And when it arrives, we're just as lost as the countless souls who came before us. Because the real test doesn't start after we die. It's happening right now. The bardo isn't just a place, it's a state of consciousness. The same illusions that trap souls after death are already deceiving us in life. The fear that causes souls to run from wrathful visions is the same fear that keeps us locked in stress, worry, and control. The attachment that pulls souls back into the cycle is the same craving that drives people to chase wealth, fame, and pleasure. The blindness that keeps souls from recognizing illusion after death is the same blindness that stops people from questioning their lives right now. If you're not awake now, you won't be awake then. That's why so few people escape the cycle. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches that our habits, fears, and desires in life continue into the afterlife. Those who live in ignorance die in ignorance. Those ruled by fear will meet it again. Those who chase illusions will continue chasing them long after their body is gone. The cycle is relentless, and the most painful truth, we're the ones keeping it going. But here's the hope. The cycle is not unbreakable. These teachings were preserved for a reason, to help those who are ready wake up. And it starts with seeing reality clearly. Most people will continue living as they always have. They'll push death aside, telling themselves they'll think about it later. And then, one day, it'll be too late. They'll enter the bardo confused, disoriented, and unprepared. But for those who begin the work now, everything changes, because preparation doesn't begin after death. It begins right here, while you're still alive. And it has nothing to do with religion or rituals. It's about awareness, about seeing the illusions for what they are, about breaking free from the attachments, the fears, the false identities that keep us trapped, not only in this life, but in the next. The real question isn't just what happens after death. The real question is, are we already asleep? Most will forget what they just heard. They'll go back to distractions, routines, and programming. But a few will understand that this moment is a turning point. And so, the question becomes even more urgent. If life determines what happens after death, how do we prepare? The answer is simpler than you may think. If death is a test, then life is the study guide. The problem is most people don't even know they're being tested. They live as if they're immortal, until suddenly they're not. The Tibetan masters taught that the only way to be conscious in death is to be conscious in life. If you spend your life running from truth, numbing yourself with distractions, and avoiding self-reflection, then when the moment comes, you won't be ready. You'll cling to your identity, your fears, your regrets, and those attachments will pull you right back into the cycle. But there is another way. The first step is detachment. not detachment from life itself, but from the illusion of control. It means not being ruled by your cravings. Most people are slaves to desire, chasing money, attention, success, believing these things bring happiness. But in the bardo, none of it matters. All that matters is the clarity of your mind. The more attached you are to the material world, the harder it is to let go. And the harder it is to let go, the more likely you are to return to a life of struggle, another round of forgetting. Detachment doesn't mean you reject the world. It means you master it. You master yourself. You realize that everything is temporary, your body, your possessions, even your name. Once you truly see this, death loses its power, and that's where freedom begins. Step 2. Awareness. The bardo is a realm of illusions, but so is life. Everything you see, everything you believe, is shaped by your mind, by your fears, conditioning, and outside influence. If you can't see through illusions now, you won't be able to in death. That's why practices like meditation, self-inquiry, and deep reflection are essential, not as religious rituals, but as preparation. Just like an athlete trains before a competition, the mind must be trained before facing death, because in that moment, your thoughts become your reality. If your life has been ruled by fear, doubt, and confusion, those will consume you in the bardo. But if you've cultivated clarity, presence, and inner stillness, you'll see the illusions for what they are. You won't panic. You won't cling. You'll remain still, aware, and free. That is the difference between those who escape the cycle and those who stay trapped in it. Step 3. Acceptance. Death is not something to fear or avoid. It's the most important moment of your entire existence. It's the moment when truth is revealed. If you fear it in life, you'll carry that fear into death. But if you embrace it as a natural transition, you'll meet it in peace, not panic. The ancient masters devoted their lives to preparing for this, not out of obsession, but because they understood this truth. Life and death are two sides of the same thing. You cannot master one without understanding the other. That's also why modern society keeps us distracted, because people who no longer fear death cannot be controlled. If you understand this, you're already different from most. You've already started to wake up. But there's one final truth you need to know. The final truth about death. Most people will never prepare. They'll spend their lives chasing distractions, clinging to illusions, and fearing what they don't understand. And when death comes, they'll enter the bardo just as they lived, confused, afraid, and unaware. Here's the truth. Death doesn't change you. It reveals you. The Tibetan Book of the Dead doesn't describe heaven or hell as rewards or punishments. There's no judgment, no external deity deciding your fate. The bardo isn't a place, it's a mirror. Everything you experience after death, the clear light, peaceful and wrathful visions, the life review, and even the pull toward reincarnation, is a reflection of your own consciousness. If you lived in fear, you'll die in fear. If you lived in attachment, you'll die grasping for what's already gone. If you lived without awareness, you'll drift through the afterlife in the same way. But if you trained your mind in life, if you lived with clarity and awareness, you'll recognize the bardo for what it truly is: a test, a gateway, an opportunity. And that is the hidden secret, the knowledge that was guarded for over 1,000 years. Because once people understand the truth, they stop fearing death. They stop wasting life chasing things that don't matter. They stop being controlled by beliefs designed to keep them obedient. A person who understands death is someone who cannot be manipulated. Because when you see that this life is preparation for what comes next, everything changes. Your thoughts change. Your actions change. You stop chasing temporary pleasures. You stop fearing loss. You stop clinging to identity because you realize it was never truly real. And when that final moment arrives, when you take your last breath and step across the threshold, you will not panic. You will not grasp. You will not be pulled back into the cycle. You will be aware. And in that awareness, you will have a choice to break free or to return. Most will never get this far. They'll forget what they just heard, return to their distractions, and continue living as if none of it mattered. And when death comes, they'll be unprepared. But you don't have to be. If you've made it this far, you're already different. You're already waking up. Because in the end, the mind is the only thing that determines what comes next. But everything you've just heard is useless unless you understand this final truth. A truth hidden in secret government files. A truth about death that most will never know. And if this message spoke to you, comment, "I understood it."